Hi, I'm Eric Hagerman. Welcome to This Old House. Building your own trellis is a nice way to upgrade your garden, and using copper tubing instead of wood adds a touch of class. Over time, the metal will develop an earthy green patina. For this project, you can just glue the copper together so you don't have to mess with soldering. Before you head to the home center for supplies, check out the cut list on this webpage for a list of tools and materials. You'll need to pick up a tubing cutter if you don't already have one. We found a copper finial meant to be used as a post cap and designed our trellis so the top fits right into the finial. From there, the legs splay out to form a stable base. Of course, you can customize the height and angle of the legs however you like. The paper template is the foundation for the jig, which keeps all four sides consistent. Start by rolling out a length of paper and taping it to your work surface. Use a framing square to draw the layout lines. Mark the center line and the location of each rung. Our 6-foot-tall trellis is divided into 4 equal sections plus the legs. Now it's time to build the jig. To make the legs of the jig, line up scrap pieces of 1x with the layout marks and screw them right into the work surface. At the narrow end, screw down a spacer a 1/4 inch above the line for the top rung. The spacer should match the inside dimensions of the finial. We'll start by cutting the tubing for one side. Place a T-fitting right in the middle of the top layout line, then put an elbow at either end of it. Measure between the T and the elbows, but start at the 1-inch mark on your tape. You get a more accurate reading since you can't really use the hook. Plus, you need to add an inch anyway to account for the 1/2-inch recesses at the end of each coupling. This will give you the accurate length for each coupling. Jot down the lengths of the pieces you cut as you go for the other 3 sections. Use a combination square to transfer the coupling measurement to a piece of tubing. It's easier to spin the tubing than to rotate the marker. Use a tubing cutter to cut the couplings. Now, a plumber would rotate the cutter around the tube, but that's because it's attached to something. Here, it's just as easy to spin the tube. Dry fit the pieces for the top rung together to make sure everything nestles within the jig. Now it's time to join the rungs. Measure and cut an upright to length. Double check the length, then slip the upright into the T of the first rung. Fit a T on the other end to start the next rung. Then place the elbows and T-fittings on the line on either side of the center T and space them out evenly. Measure between the parts for the length of the 4 couplings that connect them and cut those couplings to length. Now go ahead and piece together that rung. Cut 2 more uprights and fit them into the T's facing the next rung, which is the second one from the ground. Slip T-fittings on the other ends of the uprights and measure between them to get them parallel. Then cut a coupling to fit between the open ends. Finish this rung off by evenly spacing another T and an elbow at each end, then measure and cut couplings to fit between them. Add another pair of uprights to connect the bottom rung. The other T's on this rung hold the legs instead of uprights. Measure for the couplings and add the elbows just as before. Once the entire side is assembled, check that it fits against the jig. If it looks good, cut 3 more lengths of each coupling and upright for the remaining 3 sides. Now it's time to start gluing up the first side. First, take apart all the pieces. Then, one intersection at a time, add a drop of superglue to the inside of the T's where they meet couplings and uprights. Spin the parts together to help spread the glue and press them together for a minute. That gives the glue a chance to set. Leave the elbows dry for now. We'll come back to those. Finish the first side, move it out of the jig, then build the other 3 sides. Now add glue to one open end of the elbows and join 2 sides together, 1 rung at a time. Press everything together, but not so hard that you break the glue bonds. To make the feet, take a section of tubing for a leg and hammer the bottom few inches of one end flat. Use tin snips to create a point. Add a 1/4 inch plywood spacer to the base of the finial to create a reveal on the top rung. Then thread some copper wire around that top rung and twist it in place with pliers. Since we had sandy soil, we were able to simply tap the trellis into place with a rubber mallet. In heavier soils, or denser clay, use a garden stake to create a pilot hole for the feet so you don't mangle the copper tubing. Now plant a vine, we used honeysuckle, and start it climbing with plant ties about every foot or so along the tubing. Now you can stand back and admire your new garden ornament.